Welcome to Girl Fight Talk. I'm your host, Kalah Haley, as usual, and we have a very special guest with Leister Bowling, the former, now, head coach of Elevation Fight Team here in Denver, Colorado. Thanks so much for joining our show, Leister.
No, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's crazy because the last time we spoke, we were just this piddly little team that, had our thing going on, but we've grown up a little bit since we've last had an interview, and now some big transitions are going on for you as well. UFC 207, let's kind of just start there. You have three fighters that you were coaching. Who were those three fighters?
Brandon Thatch, Neil Magny, TJ Dillashaw.
Okay, and you guys went 2-1?
Yep.
For the night?
Yep.
What were some kind of like the highs and the lows from the night?
Start with the lows, obviously, Brandon Thatch, one of the most talented guys I've probably ever been around. He's been making a lot of improvements in training on his ground game, but ultimately that, led to the demise of the fight. And then the highs, obviously, Neil Magny beating the former champ, Johnny Hendricks.
Yep.
Huge breakthrough fight for him. I mean, he's got wins over Hector Lombard, Kelvin Gastelum, some huge names. And then, to beat the former champ, that's huge. Mm-hmm. And then TJ beating TJ's the number one contender, beat the number two, just beat the number three. So, title shot definitely in the near future for him. So, yeah, it's a good night.
Definitely. And, I mean, talking about TJ, he threw down a very dominant performance.
Yeah, went exactly how we thought it would go.
Good. And his striking, I was impressed just by his blitz takedown.
Yeah.
We don't see that a lot in the UFC. George St. Pierre does a very good timed takedown after, he throws in his strikes, but TJ did this, really interesting, rushing type takedown type style. Is that something you guys practice?
Yeah, it is. That's definitely what we saw that was going to work on Lineker, too. TJ's really good at that.
Okay.
That specific takedown, along with, he's got a bunch of takedowns, but with the way that Lineker stands and he's got a real wide lead leg, and that step behind shot was going to be open, and
it was like a tackle.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. I liked it. I was like, that's they need to put that in the UFC game.
He's done it in a few other fights, but this one I think he hit it 3 times or 4 times or whatever, so everyone got to see it. But
yeah, it was really dominant.
Yeah, he's really good with it.
Cool. And so with him now fighting and being the number one contender, he is a former champion in the bantamweight division. Dominick Cruz and Cody Garbrandt just had their fight. What was your thought on that fight, the title fight?
No, that was super impressive.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest, I thought Cruz would win. Garbrandt's the better boxer and the heavier hitter, but usually guys with that kind of power can't throw it for 5 rounds. Mm-hmm. So I thought that if he didn't knock Dominick out in the first round, that he was going to have a rough night. He had a great game plan, stand in the center, and as Dominick was using his motion in and out, he just waiting to piece him up on the way in, and man, he did great, and he proved he can go 5 rounds. He did awesome. So,
yeah, and his mental game was strong. You know, there was a lot of talk about, Cody's gonna be too emotional going into that fight. He won't have the mental stamina to stay up with Dominick. He's Dominick's working him up too much. But the thing is that Cody, you said he had the stamina to go 5 rounds, but he also was playing the counter striker game. Yeah. Which he's usually the aggressor. Right. And so I think that confused Dominick.
Well, I think they just figured out that, Justin Buchholz is his head coach now, and he cornered Uriah against Dominick. He cornered TJ against Dominick, and chasing Dominick is a rough game plan because he's a really good counter striker. So, they figured it out, and it worked good. So
right, they turned the man.
He was knocking him down in the 4th and the 5th round. So
yes,
he showed he has power for 5 rounds, which is a dangerous thing.
Yeah, he knocked him down 5 times in that fight, which was crazy.
Yeah.
So what do you feel like will be? Don't give away any game plan type stuff, but if TJ gets this fight against Cody, what do you feel like is going to be some of the strategy you're going to want to use against him?
Just to go out there and have fun. TJ does his best when he's having fun and moving and using his creativity, and that's something that we really, preached to him for the last few months. And Dominick, that fight, I think you saw the most tense TJ you ever have, and I still think he won that fight. I've rewatched it several times, and I think he won that fight, but I think he would have won it way more dominantly if he did just let his emotions go and, just touch him. Don't focus so much more on the power and just be fast and have fun. He's the fastest, most athletic guy I've ever coached. So, use that and the knockout will come. But when you're looking for the knockout, it never comes.
Sure. And now you've got Cody talking about, I wanted rematch with Dominick, but I wouldn't mind a fight with TJ. But then, now I want a money fight with, Conor McGregor, which I'm like, he's 2 weight classes above you now. So what do you feel like, if anything, TJ needs to do to get that fight?
I don't think he needs to do anything else. Actions speak louder than words, and he just beat the number 2 and the number 3 ranked guy. He's number 1. The only thing left is a title shot. Garbrandt had a huge win over Dominick, and that's great. But you got to defend your belt, and everyone wants that money fight. Tyron Woodley wants his money fight. Everybody wants that. Well, start by defending your belt and make that name for yourself and establish yourself amongst one of the greats, and he can do that by beating TJ. Exactly. So that should be what he focuses on.
Exactly. And I was tweeting the other day, I said, what the 2017 resolution that all these fighters need to have is stop chasing the money fight, but becoming the money fight. So I think that TJ and Cody, and even just the history with, there's what everybody loves is all the drama behind everything. So there's enough there to... there'll be
a ton of lead up for that one for sure.
Exactly. So then, okay, after UFC 207, all the excitement, your fighters, you go 2-1. Has this transition of wanting to retire as a coach, has this kind of been on your mind for a while?
Yeah, it's been on my mind for probably 6 months.
Okay.
And the beginning of November, I told a couple of the other coaches and some of my friends I was thinking about it. And then, over Thanksgiving break, I wrote that statement that got released. And I was out of town on, the first family vacation I've gone on in a long time, where it was just me and the kids and my wife. And, we went to visit the in-laws and my grandparents. And I was away for 9 days, which is the first time I've ever done that in 10 years. Wow. And I was like, man, I'm missing a lot of this stuff. Usually my wife will drive to Omaha to see her family. I'll fly in, spend a day there, drive back with them, and because I don't want to miss anybody's training. And so over Thanksgiving break at my grandma's house, I typed up that statement, and I said, I'm going to save this. I'm going to read it a few times over the next month or so and just see how I feel, because I'm very much a person that I just make decisions and go with it. Sure. I don't think about it. I pretty much know my mind's made up. But that's a pretty big decision. It's been a long time, that I've been in this sport, and it's finally at a spot that's very profitable and making really good money doing it. I've got a great team, got potentially, 1 if not 2 title shots coming in 2017.
Right.
So it's a very tough time to walk away, because 2017 could be the biggest year our team ever has, But ultimately, my family and my kids and, my wife, it's more important to me than coaching somebody else. So
definitely.
My wife is very much a supporter of what I did. And so, I figured she was going to be so happy that I was quitting, because I'm finally going to be home and blah, blah, blah. And she was probably the one that, really made me think it through the most, because, she's very supportive. And my boys love fighting. They watch all the fights and hey, Dad, I saw you on TV, and they love it too. So it was a tough decision, but ultimately I can always go back to coaching. I can't go back to their childhood and get those times. Last summer, I think, your kid gets 14 weeks off for summer break or whatever.
Right.
I think I traveled 7 of those.
Right.
So I work a full-time job, and I was gone 7 of those weekends. I built my dream house on a lake, and last summer I only put 30 hours on my boat. It was barely out. Wasn't able to spend too much time with my kids. My sons both wrestle. I constantly miss their tournaments to go to somebody's fight. I just don't want to do that anymore. So that's ultimately what made my mind up.
Good for you. I think, I was going to ask if you were going to, think about coaching again in the future. But I think what you said about just, making sure that you don't miss these years that you can't get back.
Yeah, I'm at my 10-year-old, he's got 8 more summers at home, on the lake. And wrestling's one thing. I hate missing his wrestling, but, he could quit wrestling tomorrow and I wouldn't care. I'll support him whatever he does. But it's just those moments that,
definitely.
I'm missing a lot of them, and now 10 and 5. I'm like, I got to be home for them. And,
yeah,
you know.
10, you 2 boys.
Yeah.
What are their, if you don't mind sharing, what are their names?
Leister the 4th and Slade.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That Leister name's going strong.
Yep. Got to keep it rolling.
Cool. So, I mean, okay, well, then what's next? You know, obviously we're here in the Atlas Flooring offices.
Yeah. What's next for what?
What's next for you?
I own this store, so
Okay.
this is my business. It's a retail flooring and kitchen company, you know, so that's what pays the bills. That's my dad worked here since he was 15 years old, and then he owned it for 10 years. And then one of my good friends from when I was in like 4th grade, him and I bought it from my dad a year ago.
Okay.
And we sell all types of flooring, cabinets, countertops for kitchens, and so
cool.
And that's kind of what was tough. I work here from 7:30 till 3 every day, and then I drive to MusclePharm and coach practice.
Which
and
is
then,
not a close. That's not.
No, it's 45 minutes, and then I get done with practice, and I live east of Longmont.
I was gonna ask where you live, because
Yeah.
I was gonna say, do you live up here?
No.
Like, no.
So it's this big, 2-hour triangle that I drive every day,
Right.
and it gets old. And I'm getting home at 6:30 at night. My kids go to bed at 8.
Right.
And I'm gone on the weekend. So I think I traveled 20 times this last year.
Wow.
So it's, I love it. It was fun. I feel very blessed to be part of like truly some of the biggest names in the sport. I've coached all of them,
Right.
And been a lot of people along the way that helped me do that. And, it's very fortunate, right place, right time. And, I'll cherish those memories, but I know this is the right step. So
yeah, I know you mentioned some of those. I read your article with MMA Fighting. Who are some of those people that kind of helped push your career forward, even in the beginning?
So I was coaching. Well, first of all, I fought in 2005 for Sven Bean at Ring of Fire.
Okay.
And then
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
and
remember
then
those pictures.
and then Alvin Robinson was one of my college teammates at University of Southern Colorado, and when I got out of college, he was the champion of Ring of Fire. So I started training with him, and then I fought. And 2 weeks later, my wife got pregnant, and I decided probably shouldn't chase this dream. At that time, if you got signed to the UFC, you made like $2,000 to show, $2,000 to win. It wasn't much of a career, But then Alvin started asking me to help him with his wrestling. So like Alvin, and I worked with like Justin Salas back in the early days, and some of these guys. And I was coaching wrestling at UNC, and I went to a Ring of Fire, and Shane Carwin got announced as fighting out of Greeley, Colorado. So we had this heavyweight at the time, Reese Hopkin, who had no training partners. I was the only one that could wrestle with him, and I got sick of wrestling this heavyweight every day.
Sure.
So I reached out to Shane. I'd never met him before. And I said, hey, man, if you're truly going to pursue MMA, you should come in and get your wrestling in at UNC. You live in Greeley. And he didn't like the head coach, Jack Mon.
Okay.
So he wasn't going to come in. But I developed a relationship with him, got him to come in. So Shane was working out with Reese, and he goes, I tell you what, I'll help Reese, the heavyweight at UNC, if you'll help Nate Marquardt. So I was like, yeah, I'm a big fan of Nate. That's cool. So Nate started driving up to UNC 2 to 3 times a week, and we would just wrestle one-on-one. Like, we would just train together.
Yeah.
And then that was like, I started doing that around the time that he fought Damian Maia. And then I cornered him for the Chael Sonnen fight, and that was the first time.
Knockout.
Yeah. Yep. And then I cornered him for Chael Sonnen, which was the first time I cornered Nate. And he started asking me, like, the first time he asked me if he could bring people, he's like, hey, coach, is it cool if I bring George and Keith to practice on Thursday? I said, yeah, sure. And I didn't know who he was even talking about, and it was George St. Pierre and Keith Jardine.
Yeah.
And so that was like a pretty big moment for, like, when people see that you're training that caliber of guys, then everyone wants to train with you. And George then would come out for a week of every camp and come out just to wrestle with me. So I'd wrestle with him for a week of every camp. He flew me up to Montreal.
Okay.
Did an article calling me one of his wrestling coach, and that was kind of like the credibility that got me. That he set me up to train Vitor Belfort. I actually worked with Dominick Cruz for a couple days in Vegas when I was training Vitor. So it's, I don't know. And then Brendan Schaub was actually the first guy that asked me to be his head coach and run his camps for him. Okay. And those were those early days. It was a lot of fun. So
yeah, that's awesome. And so, I mean, you went from coaching, collegiate wrestling to coaching some of these, some of the most high-profile fighters. Yeah. In the earlier days in the UFC to establishing.
So on that note. Yeah. After a year of coaching UNC and working with these fighters on the side, I decided I love coaching MMA. So I left UNC, I was still working here the whole time.
Okay.
I left UNC and started coaching at Grudge and Easton's.
Okay.
So I was coaching at Grudge and Easton's. Mondays were at Grudge. Wednesdays was at Easton's here in Boulder.
Okay. And that's what, Trevor Whitman?
Yeah, Trevor Whitman.
Mm-hmm.
You know, both him and Amal Easton opened their doors to me, gave me a key to the gym, and I was running wrestling practices there. And that lasted like 3 or 4 years. And then Cowboy, I was training Cowboy, and he asked me to run a practice for him at MusclePharm because he was sponsored by MusclePharm. So I went there, and it's this beautiful empty facility, and my brain was instantly like, oh man, this is, because to me, MMA is the only sport where, you know, you can be sitting on your couch one day, drinking a beer, eating Cheetos, and say, you know what, I'm going to be a professional fighter. And on Monday, you can show up at, you know, at the time, Grudge Training Center is one of the best gyms in the world. You can show up there and say, I want to be a fighter, here's my membership. And you could train alongside Nate Marquardt, Shane Carwin, Brennan Schaub, the best in the world. You know, if I decided today I want to be a Bronco player, I wouldn't even know where they practice. Like, you're not going to find those guys. You can't get in contact with them. So it used to drive me crazy that, you know, you're the best in the world. GSP is coming to train out here, and he does his class and instantly has to, like, get off the mats because there's another class coming in.
Right.
Kids or women or somebody taking pictures or whatever, you know? And I was like, I saw MusclePharm, and I was like, man, this is it. This is this private facility nobody can get into. You know, like, that's how a professional athlete should train.
Right.
So Sven Bean put me in touch with Joe Lewanson, who was working at MusclePharm at the time, and, you know, we put this meeting together, and Sven kind of pitched it to him and said, hey, he wants to run just wrestling practices here, and Friday nights, just private sparring for guys that are in camp. And I still consider myself part of, like, the Grudge team and Easton team, but Grudge and Easton's were kind of, like, having a little feud for, like, who can train where and this weird, and I didn't want to be a part of it because they both let me train at their gyms at the same time. So my thing was like, well, rather than get in the middle of this, I'm just going to do my own thing and continue to be part of the same team.
Right.
And after a couple months of that, some fighters were, you know, kind of sick of the whole situation, and they just asked me if I'd start my own team. And so Nate Marquardt and I started Elevation Fight Team. A lot of the fighters came with. And that was that, you know, so
definitely
that was how it started.
So then how's it been? How has the relationship been with MusclePharm, doing your fight team as well as MusclePharm together? I mean, they have probably one of the most, even in the world of MMA, they have probably one of the best facilities.
Oh yeah, we're probably like the most fortunate team in the world, truthfully, that we have a corporation like MusclePharm behind us that they support us in every way possible, right? They sponsor some of the fighters, not all of them, but they do sponsor some.
Sure.
They give them bonuses when they mention MusclePharm, and, like, you know, they do an awesome job supporting the fighters. But then they also we have a fully stocked supplement room, a recovery room. We have doctors there. Like, there's anything you could ever need to train as a professional athlete, they have it, and they support us. And for the first 2 years we were there, we just used the mats and the cage, and that was it, you know. And then Ryan Drexler, the new CEO, for the last year, 16 months, something like that, he's a huge MMA fan, and so he really got behind us and said, hey, what do we need to do to help you guys be the best team in the world? You
Definitely.
know? And so that's really when they started supporting us. And, you know, Drexler and MusclePharm, like, God, they've been great to work with. So that's awesome. The craziest part about leaving now is, like, we have more fighters than we've ever had. They're higher level than we've ever had. They're making more money than they've ever had, which means my percentages are better than they've ever been. And we have MusclePharm supporting us. Like, we don't have to pay the bills. We just show up at this world-class facility and get a run practice, and we make money doing it. So we're very lucky to be in that situation.
Definitely. Well, I mean, it's pretty exciting to see, you know, this year, 2016 of MMA. There's been so much between the sale of the UFC for $4 billion. There's been, you know, talks of MMA associations, which again, that's only going to help elevate the sport. For sure. There's been, you know, incredible fights, UFC 196, 200, you know, that was okay. 202, 205, 206, 207, crazy fights. What do you look forward to in 2017 for MMA?
Being a fan.
Yeah.
Yep. That's it. Yeah,
and not having the pressure of coaching.
Yeah, but I think, I hope that MMA hasn't hit its peak, you know? I don't know. I see a lot of things changing, not necessarily for the good all the time, and we'll see. I think the one thing you missed that is the best thing about 2016 is we started to see fighters in those multi-million-dollar paydays, which we never heard about before.
Right.
And a lot of people want to criticize Conor McGregor.
He's broken the ceiling.
He broke the ceiling, you know. So now everyone's starting to get it. Ronda disclosed $3 million.
Crazy.
Like Conor McGregor's making whatever
Diaz.
millions of dollars. Diaz millions of dollars.
Brock Lesnar.
You know, they're all, and that's their disclosed pay, not including pay-per-view.
Exactly.
So to finally start to see those numbers, it gives guys like TJ Dillashaw room to, you know, he wins his belt back, say, listen, I want more money, you know? And before, they had, I think the UFC has like these hidden clauses where it's like, oh, we're going to show on your contract that gets disclosed to the commission that you made this, but then you get these hidden bonuses on the back end, right? And that's so if I'm making $50,000 per fight and I'm the champion of the world,
right,
and you're the number one contender making 20, you can't complain. But really, I'm making 100, but you don't get to see it, you know?
Right.
So they were doing stuff like that, and I think it really bit them because instead of saving them in negotiations, it was getting them criticized by everyone. Like, you know, oh, this guy's only making this or that or whatever.
Nate Diaz.
Yeah, but they're getting hit. I guarantee Nate Diaz was getting paid behind closed doors. But in the public, you know, he got them to go behind him. So, I don't know.
Definitely.
That was the best part of 2016 as far as the UFC goes.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think that, you know, hopefully these associations, need a little bit more, you know, vision and focus on what they're actually aiming to do. But those are the types of things that an association or a union would be able to help these fighters do.
For sure.
Definitely. And then you don't have situations where, you know, you have Khabib Nurmagomedov offering to pay Tony Ferguson $200,000.
I think that was a fake account, a fake Twitter account.
Do you?
I think so.
I was listening to it on Ariel's show.
Really?
And he confirmed it. He was
really?
offering him to.
And Ariel would look into it too.
Yeah, yeah. So
I don't think he has $200,000.
Yeah, well, there you go. So, I mean, and that's the thing that's the other part too, is when you have these fighters who aren't making enough, they go and seek, you know, jobs in other arenas and other industries, entertainment.
The money part of it's one thing, the ranking system's another, you know, like there's no reason TJ Dillashaw should have to be rallying for a title shot. Like, you know,
having to get tattoos.
There needs to be like a legit ranking system that determines who gets the next crack. Right. You know, and I know boxing's not that way either, and it's that combat sports mentality, you know. But to me, Neil Magny's never going to be a shit talker. He's never going to be Conor McGregor. He shouldn't have to be. You know, when you're beating the guy he's beating, and yeah, I know he lost to Lawrence Larkin too, so like he's not ready for a title shot yet, but he wins a couple more fights, even maybe one more big fight in the top 5. He deserves a title shot more than Cody Garbrandt did, who's never beat anyone inside the top 10.
Exactly.
But he goes out and dominates the champion, you know? Like, I'm not saying he didn't deserve it. Obviously, he did. But, like, there needs to be something set in place. You can't just skip the line, you know?
And it makes it so that, I mean, even, like, the Reebok sponsoring system is based off of the rankings. Yeah.
Not anymore.
Oh, it's not?
No, that's how it originally started, and now it's based on how many fights you have in the UFC.
Okay.
So if you make 1 through 5, or if you've been in the UFC for 1 through 5 fights, you get 2,500. 5 through 10, 5,000. 10 through 15, 15,000. 15 plus 20,000 or something like. It goes up in this tiered system. So
sure. Yeah. But that's still a very arbitrary way of giving people determining value for.
What's even funnier about that is they come to the back. This was the first time I've heard it, and because if you notice now, fighters never put their shirts on after the fight.
Interesting.
And they used to, because they had sponsors on it. They were getting paid all kinds of money. Well, whoever put that Reebok deal in place forgot to put that on there, that you have to wear your shirt after the fight. So they come up to us in the locker room and they're like, hey, cornerman, we need to do a better job helping fighters put their shirts on after the fight. And I said, nope, it's not in their contract. Pay them more. You know, pay them more if you want them to put their shirts on. I'm not giving fighters their shirts after a fight.
Yeah.
And they were dumbfounded that I said that, but I'm right.
Yeah.
It's not in their contract. They're not doing it.
Good. That's awesome. And I think just that statement right there is a summary of just who you've been as a coach. Yeah. Even our last time we spoke, you talked about how you had Kaz Ngannou. You know, you guys just being great friends, and you know, her and her son living with you guys for a little while. Yeah. And I think you even talking about how, you know, this Atlas Flooring is your main source of income, and not allowing, you know, the interest of the fighters winning was pure and not out of, you know, this is my paycheck.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I'm just personally very grateful that you've, you know, there are a lot of fighters and a lot of coaches out there that, you know, have a lot of other interests and, I don't know what the word is, but motivations for what they do with coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you've got a great example with, you know, putting your boys and your family as your priority.
Yeah.
For
I'm in a very fortunate position that I never relied on fighters to pay my bills, you know, and a lot of that comes down to, you know, my occupation and my business and that taking care of my bills, you know,
right.
But it also comes down to being lucky enough to, I mean, luck's not really the right word because I just had an idea and ran with it when it went to MusclePharm, you know,
right.
And being able to use this world-class facility at no charge, you know, and,
right.
and I just made some good decisions, I guess, that really worked out, but I'll never act like I'm not lucky. I mean, I'm lucky to be in that position because if I owned a gym and I had, you know, X amount of dollars due every month for my lease or for whatever, lights, right. Heat, everything like that, then I would have to be more business savvy when it comes to charging fighters and, you know, doing that. And I charge them. I don't let anybody not pay. It's a sure. business and, you know, you have to pay sure. to do it. But, yeah, I feel like I always did it for the right reasons and, you know, stand for what I believe in. So
that's awesome.
Appreciate that.
I hope we see you in the future. You know, and I think your boys looking back on this time, hopefully they really see that, wow, my dad, he really, you know, put us first, which is a great example, I think.
Yeah.
So thanks so much, Lisa, for the time.
No, thank you guys.
We really appreciate you having us up here.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming.
Thank you. All right, well, we'll see you later.
All right, thanks.